Welcome to Imaginary Lands, the works of award-winning author and storyteller Bobby Pell. Today's selection, Miranda and the Miracle Maker, is a blend of folklore, spirituality, and healing for a young girl who tends to hold on to her pain. With a bit of faerie aid, Randy discovers a new mystery within her beloved woods while opening herself to her own heart.
Miranda, get up out of that hay, girl, and go find your brothers. It's almost time for dinner, shouted Maeve, hoping that her daughter down in the field might hear her. The O'Connor family owned a small farm in Western Ireland. That girl, always with her head in the clouds, looking up and seeing what nobody else sees. Dragons, water pixies, fairies, even unicorns. Sakes alive, I know that girl hopes to be a writer some day. I just wish I could keep her grounded till then. Miranda! I heard you, Mother, said Randy. Her mother was the only person who called Randy by her true name, and Randy liked the sound of it. I'll bet the boys are down in the vegetable garden pitching gourds again. I'll fetch them. Shall we bring back any berries? Her mother thought for a moment, then shouted, There might be a few of those wild raspberries in the north field. Wouldn't that be a nice treat tonight? Get the boys and be quick about it. Maeve went back inside to finish the meal. Randy ran quickly through the fields she loved, skipping over creeks and playing hopscotch on the boulders. She had a special place in the woods, right beside the creek, that even her brothers, James and William, didn't know about. It was here that she would share her secrets with the woods. Once she saw a wee flower fairy flitting about, its tiny wings fluttering like a lightning bug. She made the mistake of telling some of her friends at school, and they teased her unmercifully. It hurt Randy so much that since then she kept mostly to herself. Soon she reached the garden. James! William! Time for supper! Then she headed off towards the north field to gather the berries. It wasn't long before all three of them were seated down to dinner. After their wonderful raspberry dessert, the family moved into the living room. It was here that Randy's brothers would begin their nightly torment, for nothing pleased them more than teasing their little sister. Tonight would prove to be no different. William, the oldest, started. So, Randy, have you seen how lovely Rose McKinney is looking lately? Quite the early bloomer. All the boys will be after her soon enough. Aye, but she's still too young, said Maeve. She's only 15. That's just 3 years older than your sister here. But I guess she'll be marrying soon enough. James jumped in. I'll bet Randy never gets married. Who'd want to marry plain old Randy anyway? All those freckles and that red hair's always a mess. She hardly talks to anybody because her head is always buried in a book. Why, everybody thinks she's crazy after talking about seeing the fairies. Then he and William started jeering at her. Crazy Randy! Loony girl Randy! Mother, make them stop! But despite Maeve's stern looks, the boys did not stop. They began dancing around Randy, shouting louder than before. She felt the tears ready to burst inside of her, but she didn't want to let James and William see her cry. She bolted from the house, crossed the fields into the woods, and didn't stop until she came to her special place by the creek. The tears finally came, raining down her cheeks in torrents. She sobbed so hard that her whole body shook. But then the crying stopped. She breathed deeply and let out a sigh. This was not the first time that their words had hurt her so deeply. She looked down and noticed that her tears had mingled with the soft dirt beside her, creating little patches of clay. She scooped up some in her hands and began molding it with her fingers. Without thinking, she formed the lump into a ball. Somehow it comforted her. Then she remembered the cruel things her brother had said to her. You're not very pretty. You'll never fit in at all with the others. You're too quiet. And with each taunt, she scooped up more clay, adding a new layer to the bowl. Soon it was the size of a large potato. She held it close to her chest, hugging it fiercely, and shut her eyes as she closed out the world. Then she heard a sound like the tinkling of hundreds of tiny bells. She remembered hearing stories about fairy footsteps as they danced through the forest. She looked through the trees and saw several tall women coming towards her. They were dressed in gowns of woodland greens and browns that flew about them like butterfly wings. Colorful garlands of flowers adorned their hair. The tallest woman, however, wore a saffron robe the color of sunlight, with a sash of daisies and a long pearl necklace. Randy didn't quite know what to do. "Don't be afraid, little one," said the tallest woman. "We come in peace. My name is Juniper, and these ladies are wood spirits." The women stood still beside her. "What do you want?" asked Randy. "Why, nothing, child, nothing at all. You took us quite by surprise. We are not accustomed to being seen by your kind." "What do you mean, my kind?" asked Randy, feeling hurt all over again. "Mortals," giggled the women. Randy couldn't stand being laughed at any more, so she began yelling at them. "Now you're making fun of me. You're no better than my brothers. I can't help it if I'm different. It's the only way I know to be." She stood still, wrapped up in all the heart. "You mistake our gentle laughter, child," said Juniper. "We meant no harm. Come, dance with us, so that we may lift your broken spirit." Randy hesitated, biting her lower lip. "Well, I don't know. You look safe enough to me, and I do like to dance. I'm just not sure." She stroked the ball, comforting herself. "Just give me your hand, child," whispered Juniper, extending an open palm to Randy. As Randy reached for Juniper's hand, the ball began to slip. "You'll have to put the ball down. Let it go, child." Juniper's words rang true deep inside Randy, but her fears sprang forward instead. "No, it's mine. You don't care about me. Nobody can take this ball from me, not even you." Randy clutched the ball so tightly that her fingertips made small impressions on the ball. "Oh, we were just trying to help." But Randy couldn't hear her words, for Randy closed herself up deep inside. She didn't see the women leave as they melted into the early evening twilight. Randy felt more alone than ever. Then she heard twigs snapping behind her, and rather than meet anybody else, she clung to her ball of hearts and began running down the path. It took a sharp curve to the right. She had been running so fast that she slipped on the tall grass, and her legs flew right out from under her, landing Randy squat on the ground. It was then she heard the footsteps coming towards her. "More people? Why won't they just leave me alone?" Randy looked up to see a hooded figure, totally enveloped in light, approaching her. The long robe seemed white at first, then changed color with each footfall, shimmering from deep purple to gold and back to white. The stranger's broad shoulders held the flowing garment in regal elegance. Randy could do nothing but sit and stare as the hood fell back, revealing a man with wavy brown hair, the color of oak, a trim beard, and eyes as green as the fields. "Who are you?" she said, standing up to face him. "I am known by many names. For you, I am Miracle Maker," he said, smiling gently at her. "What's a miracle maker? Is that some kind of magician?" "In a way, yes. You see, magicians allow you to believe in all sorts of things that you cannot see. They open up the world of the imagination that lies within you," he said, pointing at his heart. "I make the impossible possible. Just trust me and believe. Then the miracle will happen." "But what can you do for me?" asked Randy, stroking and cradling her ball. With a clear and decisive voice, he replied, "Put your hands into mine, and you shall see." "My hands? You want me to let go of this ball, just like those ladies in the woods? You're trying to trick me with those fancy clothes and pretending to be nice? Well, it won't work. It's mine." She curled her whole body around the ball, protecting it. "Miranda," he said softly. "Only my mother calls me that. How do you know my true name?" "I have known you for a long time." But I don't recognize you," said Randy, squinting her eyes to get a better look at him. "You must close your eyes, little one, and look with your heart." For some reason, Randy felt she could trust him, so she closed her eyes. She thought of nights when she went to bed crying herself to sleep, remembering the one who had held her while she dreamed. She recalled always feeling so different from everyone else, judged even by her family and friends, yet not by the one who truly accepted her. She thought of all the times she had come to this creek, pouring her heart out to nobody. Yet from somewhere deep inside, she would hear a voice say, "I am here, Miranda. You are not alone." She now opened her eyes and stared at Miracle Maker. "I'm still here, Miranda. I've always been here for you." Tears began welling up in her eyes again. "It is you, isn't it? Somehow, it's you." "Yes," he said. "Now give me the ball and release your hurts. Let me help you." Miracle Maker opened his hands towards her. Randy struggled, for now the ball seemed heavier in his presence. She lifted it towards him, and he placed his hands over the ball. Randy closed her eyes as he whispered quiet prayers, then noticed that the ball seemed lighter. She opened her eyes to watch the ball getting smaller and smaller with every word he spoke. Bits and pieces were flying upwards like grains of sand, being transformed into shooting stars until the ball had disappeared. "See how love transforms hurt into radiant joy," exclaimed Miracle Maker. He took her hands firmly in his, threw back his head, and laughed out loud. His laughter created prisms of musical notes in the air around them like thousands of butterflies. "You may not always see me, little one, but know that I am near. Love never leaves once it enters your heart. Here, I give you this gift in remembrance of me." Then he leaned over and kissed her on the forehead. Randy felt a warmth like a bath of liquid gold coating her from head to toe. Then Miracle Maker placed his fingertip on the very spot where he'd kissed her. Miranda felt a sharp prick. Then it was gone. Miracle Maker began walking back into the woods and melted into the shimmering moonlight. Then he was gone. Randy ran home as fast as she could. Maeve had been worried, for Miranda was seldom gone this long, especially so close to dark. William and James were involved in a heated game of cards and didn't even notice their sister's return. "Miranda, come here, girl," said her mother, hugging her daughter close. "Why, you look a sight. Let's sit down in front of the fire, and I'll comb that beautiful hair." Miranda sat down while her mother began brushing out the tangles from Miranda's flight through the woods when Maeve noticed something. "Miranda, darling, what's this on your forehead? Looks like some type of scar. I don't remember that being there." Miranda reached up and touched her forehead. It was the very spot where Miracle Maker had kissed her. The mark was in the shape of a star, just like the ones created when her ball of hurts was transformed by love. "It's all right, Mother. It's just to help me remember that I'm never alone, and that no matter what anybody says, There is always somebody who loves me just the way I am." She beamed up at her mother, hugged her again, then went into the kitchen to make them both some tea.